Hey guys, Peter Von Panda here. Hey, if you're an Anne of Green Gables fan, then you know Prince Edward Island, and I recently took a trip there and I wanted to share it with you. So, if you're an Anne fan, this is your Graceland, but even if you're not, it's a fantastic destination for the laid-back country seaside vacation that you probably deserve. I recently visited P.E.I. and wanted to share my tips with you. First, if you're from the States, then you have to fly into an international airport and go through customs. You can fly directly to PEI. However, I visited some other places first and ended up driving to the island. You can drive there and get to the island either by ferry or by the Confederation Bridge, which is what I use. The bridge itself is interesting because it has a sort of controversial beginning and is fairly young. At 8 miles in length, it's a long drive that rises in elevation to give you great views on clear days, but certainly might be a little sketchy in bad weather. There's no toll to drive to PEI, but there is a toll charged to you when you leave, which is about $45 Canadian. If you visit, I might suggest using the bridge for one leg of your trip and taking the ferry for the other leg, just for diversity. Once you arrive on the island, there's a little tourism village at the end of the bridge, which I visited on the way out. The island is pretty big. In fact, I was kind of overwhelmed by how large it is. So driving from city to city can actually take quite a bit of time. So it's going to really behoove you to plan ahead and schedule your trip so that your stops gradually move you across the island. The first thing you'll notice is that the rolling landscape looks like the ideal farm landscape that you probably assume PEI looks like. What it didn't dawn on me is that PEI is primarily a farming community. I had always assumed that it was a big fishing industry there, and you're going to find a lot of places that have really good steaks on the menu. There are lots of little seafood places too, but the season is actually fairly short for fishing, and depending on when you visit, your seafood may actually have been frozen for a while, but it's still tasty. Cow's Creamery is also based in PEI, and you'll find their ice cream stores everywhere, which makes sense given how many cows you'll see on your trip. Charlottetown is the capital and the largest and most city-like place that I visited. This is where you're going to find a Walmart and a Home Depot. Tim Hortons are plentiful around the island too, and they are a great place to grab a Wi-Fi connection and a donut. The downtown area near the docks just off of Water Street is heavily tilted towards tourism, and cruise ships regularly dock there. There's a lot of shopping with a heavy bent towards the Lucy Maud Montgomery and the Anne of Green Gables heritage. Just inland from the docks is the more cosmopolitan area of Charlottetown, and it feels a lot like the streets of Boston. Restaurants, coffee shops, and other eateries abound. Walk up Queen Street to Richmond Street, which is also known as Victoria Row. Over in this area, during the summer months, the street is closed to vehicle traffic and features a lot of sidewalk streeting, street performances, shopping, food, coffee, and the like. It's much like a Pearl Street in Boulder, Colorado, although on a much smaller scale. At the corner of Richmond and Queen is The Guild, which runs a live theater. Here I ended up seeing the Anne and Gilbert musical, which is a sequel to the Anne of Green Gables musical, and follows her lot in life a little bit later. If you're like me and not particularly familiar with the story, it's a great and entertaining way to build an appreciation for the story, and will add a lot of context for the rest of your trip. Tickets were around $40 a person in Canadian money, and it was well worth it. Karen Slater captured Anne's bold independence, and Alex Ferber was perfectly cast as Gilbert with his authentic gentleness. I couldn't get actual footage of the performance, so these practice sessions are a good example of what to expect. The theater is small, probably only holds 150 people or so any seat is fine. But if you're a fan, sitting towards the center of the theater is going to be ideal. They don't sell tickets at the door, so book them online beforehand. And during the tourism season, the performances sell out quickly. It's on my list of PEI to-dos. This one is a must. Of course, you're probably going to head to the north end of the island to see the home of Lucy Maud Montgomery and the inspiration for the Anne of Green Gables saga. The area is called Cavendish and located near the North Beach area near the Prince Edward Island National Park. I stayed at the historic Dalvet by the Sea Hotel, which is inside the park. The hotel itself has a long history of being converted from a private mansion and can be seen in the miniseries as well as the spin-off television show. It's also hosted Prince William and Princess Kate when they visited and is worth a visit even if you don't end up staying there. If you do decide to stay there, expect more of a bed and breakfast style accommodations as opposed to a modern hotel. There are no TVs, phones, or air conditioning. The rooms are quite small and the floors creak, but it adds to the charm. For me, 2 nights there was more than adequate, and I'd probably suggest only 1 night for those of you that are accustomed to more luxurious hotels. There are a lot of beaches in the park, and there's a large one right across the street from the Delve, just north of the hotel. The hotel will loan you blankets and chairs to take to the beach, which is a nice feature. Take note if you're visiting the island early in the tourism season, which is more determined by weather than the calendar, you may end up encountering a lot of jellyfish at the beaches, which is what happened to me because they tend to come out after the winter freeze is over. Early in the season, there are often a lot of mosquitoes too, so you may want to consider coming a bit later in the summer or just being prepared with repellents. They also rent out cabins just south of the main Delve Hotel. There are a ton of places to sit and hang out, including a bar, a living room, chairs, and hammocks on the lawn. So lots of places to have a good conversation and just relax. There's also an attached restaurant at the hotel, and the food is decent, but I think you'll find more charm and variety by heading out and hitting up local places. In the park, and only a few minutes away, is a local seafood shack called Richard's, which drew crowds every night. It was a great place to get a seafood basket and watch the sunset. The rustic shack-style building has a second floor that offers great views of PEI greenery and water. The Delve now is only 15 minutes or so from the Green Gables site, so it's a convenient location if you're going to see the site over a couple of days. However, keep in mind the national park has an entrance fee, so don't leave it unnecessarily or you'll be forced to pay a few bucks every time you re-enter the park, even if you tell them you're staying at the Delve. We drove to the childhood home of Lucy Maud Montgomery, and on the property there's a small building that houses a gift shop and some artifacts. At the time I visited, there was actually a docent there sharing some of the history and insights. The property is still owned by her descendants and is definitely a combination of picturesque farm and forest land. The entrance site fee is on the honor system, but you can purchase a pass in the building for both the home and the Green Gables historic site, which is just down the road. Keep your receipt because you'll need it when you get there, otherwise you're going to have to pay again. So, the original Lucy Maud Montgomery home no longer exists, but the foundation is still visible. It's always surprising to see how small houses were and how crowded it must have felt, especially during the severe PEI winters. The estate has a number of signs around the property identifying things that our fans might recognize. From there, you can walk through the fields and through the haunted woods, which certainly could have been intimidating for a child and were featured heavily in the stories. There's a fairly long walk to the Green Gables house, which is called the Green Gables Heritage Site, and it sits on top of a small hill with impeccable landscaping. It is truly the Prince Edward Island ideal picture. The house has been well maintained and even repaired once after a small fire. There are barns on the property that were more of a modern addition by the Park Service to replicate the dairy farm setting from the books. The Green Gables refers to the decorative green framing at the peaks in the roof, and the house is really very attractive. It's small and similar to the one in the miniseries, but it is not actually part of anything that was on film. In fact, they used two different houses, I believe outside of Toronto, and this was not one of them. You can tour the house, and there's a small fee for doing that, about $7 per person Canadian, which you can pay in cash when you get there or show them your receipt from the Lucy Maud Montgomery home. The barns have exhibits inside explaining the features of the dairy farm. There's an Anne character milling around and available for pictures, who's always very friendly. And there was even a story time session for kids going on at the time, and they were reading the Cherry Cordial excerpt from the book, if you're familiar with that. Of course, there's a gift shop, and I had no idea there was so much Anne merchandise, from dolls to hats with sewn-in red hair, and everything in between. You will find something unique there to take back home with you. Jump back in your car and drive down the block to the Avonlea Village, which is an interpretation of the Avonlea town from the books. It's set on its own private block, and the buildings look period correct, but house modern businesses. I believe there's no longer an entrance fee for access into the village, so it's definitely worth going to. There's a chocolate store, a restaurant, there's even a church, and on some days, I believe, there's a parade at noon. Of course, there's a Cow's ice cream store there, too. I eventually made my way to the east end of the island and enjoyed a couple of nights at the inn at Bay Fortune. It's owned by celebrity chef Michael Smith and his wife, and the inn has the modern amenities that you'd expect at a hotel, yet still is more intimate and rustic feeling. There's a nice lounge in the main building, and the rooms are large and equipped with a TV, fireplace, and coffee maker. and even firewood. Of course, the best part is the dinner experience in their fireworks restaurant, which is what Michael Chef is certainly flexing his culinary muscle with. The name comes from the fact that they cook over an open fire pit in front of the guests. The dinner is referred to as the feast and will probably get you 8 or 9 total courses via their tasting menu. My dinner included Colville Bay oysters, smoked salmon, red fife, flax and oat bread, a taste of island board, smoked lobster, chowder, a wonderful fresh garden salad, roasted leg of lamb, and the trimmings, and a strawberry almond tart. It was fantastic. And the method is that you eat with other guests, which was a great opportunity to learn about other people. Canadians are super friendly. The food was fantastic, and it kind of follows Michael Smith's simple but perfect philosophy of cooking. The menu can change daily, and I recommend that if you want to participate in the feast, you should book your stay and your reservations for dinner early. The entire summer was already booked by the time I visited, and the prices have also gone up since I visited, which is now costing about $95 per person Canadian, but I think it's well worth it. The cost does not include alcohol or gratuity, so keep that in mind. But if the US dollar is strong and you're from the States, it's going to even be a better deal. Your room fee includes breakfast the next morning too, which was a frittata and a really delicious breakfast that gives the inn another notch for value. I absolutely recommend making this stop on your PEI trip because it was definitely one of the highlights of my trip that I really didn't expect. There are some great beaches on the east side and fantastic scenic drives, which I did take. If you're looking to take the ferry back to the mainland, it's actually only a short drive from the inn, so I might recommend visiting the inn either when you're coming off the ferry immediately, or if it's your last stop on your trip to the ferry, it would make a lot of sense to do that. I, however, drove all the way back to the Confederation Bridge and actually stopped in that gateway village that I mentioned that's at the foot of the bridge before heading back to the mainland. The gateway village is one of your last chances to buy souvenirs and Cow's ice cream, which I did. It's actually pretty convenient to buy gifts there that you may be looking for families and friends, so you don't have to lug around souvenirs during your whole entire trip on the island. And the prices are pretty much in line with what I found at other places around the island. So, if you like the Anne of Green Gables story, or you just enjoy relaxed, serene vacations, definitely spend some time in Canada and visit Prince Edward Island. Peter von Panda, out.